I've carried the secret for 10 years, and every part of my life has been built around hiding it. My marriage, my job, even the town I moved to. But yesterday, someone sent me a picture, one that proves he's found me. And now I have to decide whether to run again, or finally tell the truth. The doorbell rang at 11:30 a.m., one of those sharp, echoing chimes that makes your stomach drop before you even know why. When I opened the front door, 2 police officers stood on my porch. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a serious stare and a neatly trimmed mustache, and beside him, a younger woman with her hair pulled back so tight it looked like she hadn't blinked in hours. The man asked, "Are you Mrs. Anastasia Hawkins?" My heart started pounding, but I nodded. "Yes, that's me." He introduced himself as Officer Dominic Scott and his partner as Officer Paula Haynes. His tone was calm, professional, but there was something in the way he said, "We need to discuss something important," that made my knees feel weak. We moved into the living room. I offered them coffee, anything to make this feel normal, but they politely refused. Dominic didn't waste time. "This is regarding your husband, Marcus." For a second, I actually smiled, relieved. "Oh, he's fine. He left for work this morning, just like always." "What's this about?" Paula and Dominic exchanged one of those silent conversations, just a look, and suddenly my skin felt cold. Officer Paula said softly, "Mrs. Hawkins, a missing person report was filed for Marcus. By his mother." I half laughed because the idea was insane. Missing? No, that's impossible. He kissed me goodbye at 7:30 this morning. He's at work. Dominic opened a notepad. According to Cecilia Hawkins, she hasn't spoken to her son in 4 days. When she called his employer yesterday, she was told he hadn't been into the office all week. The air went dead still. "That can't be right," I insisted. "Marcus works at Mir & Associates. There's a huge project going on, he's been coming home exhausted every night." Paula shook her head gently. "We reached out to Mir & Associates. They confirmed he hasn't been in since last Thursday." My hands started shaking as I grabbed my phone. I hit call. 1 ring. 2. Straight to voicemail. "There has to be some mix-up," I said. "He's been leaving the house every morning, coming home the same time he always does. He talks about work at dinner. Just last night he said he had a client meeting that ran late." Dominic asked, "What time did he get home yesterday?" 6:15, I answered immediately. "We had leftover lasagna," he said. The meeting threw off his schedule. Then Paula asked, "When did you last speak with your mother-in-law?" "Sunday," I said. "We were supposed to have dinner at her place, but Marcus told me she canceled, said she wasn't feeling well." Paula's voice tightened. "Cecilia told us that dinner was never planned." I didn't know what to say. Everything suddenly felt tilted, like the floor wasn't stable anymore. The officers asked to walk through the house. I showed them our bedroom, his clothes still in the closet, his toothbrush still on the sink. It all looked so normal, so routine. Then Paula asked to see his passport. I opened the drawer where we kept important documents, insurance papers, our marriage certificate, and my blood ran cold. His passport was gone. So was his birth certificate. That was in here. Both of them. I saw them last week when I was paying bills. While Dominic radioed someone, I just stood there staring at the empty slot in the drawer. A moment later he returned. "One of our officers spoke with your neighbor, Christian Rogers. He says he saw Marcus loading bags into his car last Thursday afternoon around 1 p.m. "No," I argued, shaking my head. "He was at work. He told me he got stuck in the office until late." Dominic wasn't confrontational, but his tone was final. Mr. Rogers was certain. My heart felt like it was cracking open. I called Marcus' office myself, demanded to speak to his assistant, Kimberly. The second she recognized my voice, she sounded like she'd swallowed her breath. "Anastasia, he hasn't been in. He asked for personal leave last Wednesday. He said it was a family emergency." I felt like the room tilted. Personal leave? Emergency? None of this made sense. Then Dominic said carefully, "We'll need to check bank records. Sometimes missing persons." "You think he left me?" I snapped, anger rising up fast because that was easier to feel than terror. "That's ridiculous. Marcus and I have been married 6 years. Everything is fine. Why would he just vanish?" My phone vibrated. Bank app notification. I opened our joint account. The balance stared back at me, $843. Last week, it was over $32,000, our house down payment. Our future. I scrolled and saw the transaction. $31,500 transferred on Thursday. To an account I'd never seen. My voice came out barely a whisper. This has to be a mistake. Credit card statements told a different story. A purchase at a luggage store. Men's warehouse. A rideshare to the airport. Paula asked if Marcus had family in other states or overseas. I mentioned his old college roommate in Costa Rica, someone he had visited last year. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "We'll need his contact information." When the officers finally left, my friend Kimberly rushed over after I texted her. She looked at me with the kind of face people wear at funerals. "Has he said anything strange lately?" she asked carefully. I told her he'd mentioned a promotion coming soon. That we'd be able to afford the house in Oak Ridge. Her expression crumpled. "Anna, Marcus was laid off from Mir 3 months ago. Everyone knew. We all thought you did, too." It was like someone lit a match and dropped it inside my chest. Everything burned. That night, I tore apart the closet. Behind old coats, inside a dusty suitcase, I found a prepaid phone. Trembling, I had it unlocked the next day by a tech shop. The call log showed dozens of calls with the same number. And the most recent text. "Flight confirmed." Meet you there tomorrow. 2 days later, Officer Paula called back. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. Mrs. Hawkins, we've confirmed Marcus boarded a flight to San Jose, Costa Rica. My heart practically stopped. Then she added, and he didn't travel alone. So, yeah. Turns out my husband didn't just disappear. He straight up ditched his entire life, flew to Costa Rica with someone else, and drained every cent from our savings. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the sheer boldness of it. The audacity. Like he walked out the front door, kissed me goodbye, and just never came back. To everyone who messaged after my first post, thank you. Some of you saw this coming before I did. And honestly, I wish I'd listened when my instincts started whispering that something wasn't right months ago. The day after Officer Paula called with the flight confirmation, I tried calling Marcus. Once, twice, 50 times. Every single call went straight to voicemail. At first my messages were confused, begging him to please call me back, asking where he was and what was going on. By message 30, I was screaming into the phone. I told him he was a coward for sneaking away instead of looking me in the eye. He never answered. Not once. Just silence. Then his mother, Cecilia, called. She asked if the police had found him yet, and I said, yeah, they did. He's in Costa Rica having the time of his life. She made these dramatic little shock noises, asking if I was sure, like I'm just making up an international disappearance for fun. So I asked her why she filed the missing person report if she already knew something was off. And suddenly her whole tone changed. Defensive. Shaky. I was just worried about my son. Sure. I told her worried mothers don't wait 4 whole days to report their adult son missing when they normally talk constantly. She went quiet. Then, after this awkward pause, she admitted Marcus called her last Wednesday night and told her he was leaving me. Left out the small detail where he cleared out our bank account, but told her he needed space and not to worry. And here's the part that made my blood absolutely boil. She knew. She knew he was gone. She knew he abandoned me. She knew he told her to keep her mouth shut. And still, she stood by while the police came to my house, while I tore my life apart trying to figure out where my husband was. She watched me unravel and just let it happen. I snapped. I told her exactly what I thought of that little, secret-keeping stunt. She started crying, saying Marcus told her our marriage had problems and she didn't want to get involved. I asked her what problems, exactly. Because as far as I knew, everything was perfectly normal, until I found out he'd been unemployed and lying about it for 3 months. That shut her up. Turns out Marcus told her he got promoted and was taking a sabbatical to celebrate. She actually believed he earned that money. Cute. 2 days later, she insisted we meet in person. We sat at a Panera near her place. She looked rough, bloodshot eyes, smudged mascara, clutching her coffee like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She kept saying she had no idea Marcus would ever do something like this. He was her good boy. Someone must have changed him. I laid it out piece by piece. He lost his job in July. Every morning, he still got dressed in a suit, kissed me goodbye, and left like nothing happened. Every evening, he came home talking about meetings that didn't exist. Fake clients. Fake projects. Every word out of his mouth was a lie. And while I was budgeting our future, he was planning his escape. Cecilia kept trying excuses. Maybe he's depressed. Maybe he had a breakdown. No. Depressed people don't open secret bank accounts, buy luggage, and plan international getaways with new lovers. That takes organization. That takes time. He knew exactly what he was doing. And then she said it, almost casually, like it was nothing. Marcus called her from Costa Rica the day before. Told her he was safe. Told her he'd explain everything soon. And when she asked about me, he said you'd be fine. That you and he had grown apart. Grown apart. The same man who kissed my forehead every morning, talked about baby names, and sent me Zillow listings for houses in Oak Ridge, apparently thought we just drifted apart. I asked Cecilia for the number he called from. Of course it was blocked. The bank mess was a nightmare. I met with a manager named Adam, who looked young enough to still need a permission slip to cross the street. He kept apologizing, even though none of it was his fault. He showed me everything. Marcus had been siphoning small amounts for weeks into a new account, his name only. Then Thursday morning, while I was at work, he pulled the remaining $31,500. And the worst part? It was legal. Every cent of it. Joint accounts mean either person can empty it without permission. Same with the credit cards he maxed out on his little getaway prep. So I called a lawyer, Lucy. She said I could file for divorce and try to recover something in asset division. But if the money's already spent, I might never see it again. Her advice was to freeze everything immediately and document every purchase. Which I'd already started doing. But I wasn't done. I tore apart the apartment. Every drawer. Every coat pocket. Every dusty storage bin. That's when I found insurance paperwork for a storage unit I'd never heard of. One of those 24-hour places on the edge of town. I drove there Saturday night because sleeping wasn't happening. Unit 247. It was almost empty. Old college furniture, some boxes of junk. But in the back corner, tucked inside a folder, were printed emails. Printed. Like he was scared to leave a digital footprint. The emails were between Marcus and someone named MJ for at least 6 months. All vague but flirtatious. Can't wait to see you, just a little longer, it'll all be worth it. The last email was 3 weeks ago. MJ, apartment is ready. Deposit is paid. Marcus, finances handled. We'll be out of here by November. MJ. Could be a man. Could be a woman. Could be anyone. The Gmail address was random, numbers and letters scrambled. And then the final punch. A receipt from a jeweler. September 15th. $3,200. A ring. He bought someone else a ring while I was calculating interest rates for our future mortgage. So yeah, my husband didn't just leave. He rebuilt his entire life behind my back, piece by piece, and walked into that new world like I never existed. And the worst part? I'm starting to realize this wasn't impulsive. He planned every second. When I finally sat down with Kimberly and asked if she knew anything at all, about Marcus seeing someone, her whole expression shifted. She didn't want to look at me. Eventually she admitted that, yeah, people at the office noticed he was glued to his phone during his last few weeks there. Always smiling at whatever he was reading or typing. One of the guys, Brendan, saw Marcus having lunch with a woman back in June. He assumed it was a client or coworker. No reason to think otherwise. So I asked the obvious question, why didn't anyone tell me? Kimberly looked devastated. She said everyone thought I already knew he'd lost his job. They assumed his secretiveness was us handling things privately. And the supposed mystery woman? They didn't want to spread rumors. I get it, nobody wants to be the office gossip. But still, it hurt knowing everyone saw the cracks forming except me. Then yesterday, my sister Maria showed up from Portland. I'd tried to keep her out of this because she's 8 months pregnant and doesn't need the stress. But my mother can't keep secrets if her life depended on it. Next thing I know, Maria is standing in my doorway with 2 overnight bags and murder in her eyes. She waddles past me like an angry penguin on a mission and says, "Tell me everything." We spent hours on the floor surrounded by printed emails, receipts, bank statements, piecing together my husband's betrayal like some sick puzzle. At one point she threatened to fly to Costa Rica, track Marcus down, and drag him back by his scalp. Then she said she never liked him. Complete lie, she adored him. But in that moment, it felt good to hear. Maria said something that's been chewing on my brain like a rat in the walls. She asked, if he wanted out, why not just leave? Why put on a 3-month Broadway performance of Perfect Husband? Why keep kissing you goodnight and planning your future together? And she's right. He could have walked out. He could have asked for a divorce. He could have sat me down and told the truth. Instead, he kept up the charade. Suit and tie. Fake work stories. Date nights. Mortgage plans. Why go to those lengths? Maria thinks he was buying time. That pretending nothing was wrong wasn't for me, it was for him. He needed me to stay oblivious while he built a whole new life from scratch somewhere else. No questions, no interference, no obstacles. And that theory keeps me up at night. I tried figuring out who MJ is. I tore through his social media. Dug through old yearbooks and alumni lists. Checked every friend, coworker, and contact he'd mentioned over the years. Nothing. No one with those initials that fits. I even asked Cecilia if Marcus ever talked about new friends. She said no, but considering she also didn't know her son was broke, jobless, and planning an international escape, her intel is worthless. The hardest part is lying in our bed, staring at the ceiling, realizing I don't know the man I married. Not really. The Marcus I loved, responsible, stable, honest, that man might have been a costume. A character. Something he played when it benefited him. Because the real Marcus is someone who can sit across from me at dinner, smile, talk about our future, and simultaneously dismantle my life behind my back. I called Mir and Associates again and spoke with his former boss, Christian. When I asked why Marcus was laid off, Christian dropped that lovely corporate phrase, performance-based. Which basically means Marcus messed up badly, but nobody's going to put it in writing. Christian said Marcus was shocked. Stunned. Like he thought he was invincible. So maybe that's it. Maybe his ego couldn't handle the fall. Maybe instead of admitting failure, he chose to reinvent himself somewhere sunny where nobody knows he's a liar. Maybe MJ is someone new. Someone impressed by his stories. Someone who doesn't know what he did to get there. I still have that prepaid phone. Lucy told me to keep it, it's evidence. I keep staring at those messages. They're so casual. So affectionate. Like abandoning your spouse and stealing their future is just a cute little adventure. And then, the detail that makes my skin crawl. The number texting him has a US area code. Seattle. MJ wasn't just some foreign fling. MJ was here. In Washington. Planning everything alongside him. Last night, I called the number from a blocked line. It rang 4 times. Someone answered, but didn't speak. Just breathing. And faint background noise, like wind or waves crashing far away. Then they hung up. When I tried calling again. Disconnected. MJ had just enough time to know someone was coming. Then disappeared. 2 days after my last update, my phone lit up with a call from Lucy. Her voice was brisk, efficient, the kind you cling to when your life is wobbling. Papers are filed, she said. We just need to serve him. Serve him. Right. Tiny problem, no address in Costa Rica, just a country and a ghost. She explained we could do service by publication if he stayed missing long enough, but that would take months. Months of limbo. I told her to file anyway. We'd figure out the rest later. I hung up and stared at my ceiling like it had answers. Life, being life, didn't pause for my unraveling. That same week, Maria went into labor, early. I drove to Portland in a daze and spent 3 days in the hospital with her and Fergus. The whole place smelled like antiseptic and coffee. I held a brand new human named Sophie, her tiny fingers curling around mine like a question mark. My sister kept apologizing for the timing, as if she scheduled contractions to spite my divorce. I told her this was the best distraction imaginable. For a few breaths at a time, the world shrank to baby socks and the beep of monitors, and it almost didn't hurt to exist. While I was there, Cecilia called. 6 times. I let every call roll to voicemail until Maria, half asleep and ferocious, said, "Answer her. Rip the bandage off. So on the 7th call I did. Cecilia wanted to meet. Said she had information I needed. I told her unless that folder contained Marcus's exact Costa Rican address and a cashier's check for the money he stole, I wasn't interested. She insisted. He'd called her again. He'd admitted some things she couldn't say over the phone. Of course she couldn't. When I got back to Seattle, I met her at a little diner near my apartment, the kind with sticky menus and a bell on the door. She looked worse than the last time, puffy eyes, tremor in her hands, mascara smudged like smoke. She slid a folder across the table like we were in a courtroom. He called me crying, she said, voice cracking. 2 nights ago. He said he made a terrible mistake and doesn't know how to fix it. I stared at her. Which mistake? The stealing? The lying? Or the part where he escaped the country with my future in his carry-on? She flinched, then whispered what she should have said weeks ago. He'd been seeing someone. He lost his job, spiraled, convinced himself the life we built was a failure, and this new person looked like a fresh start. The name hit me like a slap, Madison Jimenez. A woman. Honestly, I'd already suspected MJ, but hearing it out loud still knocked the air out of me. Madison lives in Seattle, Cecilia added. They met through an online gaming community. He joined last year. I actually laughed, one sharp, ugly sound. Marcus, who couldn't program a DVR without cursing, suddenly an online gamer? What else had he been playing? Why are you telling me now? I asked. She got defensive, said I deserved the truth. I told her the truth would have been useful 3 weeks ago when the police rang my doorbell. She started to cry, again, saying Marcus was her son and she was caught in the middle. I told her there is no middle anymore. He made a choice when he drained our account and kissed the tarmac goodbye. She could stand with him if she wanted, but I wasn't auditioning for supportive ex-daughter-in-law. Then she said something that made my blood spark. Marcus wants to talk to you. He asked me to arrange a call. He was afraid you might, she cleared her throat, react badly. I actually laughed again, because what else do you do when the man who detonated your life worries about your tone? I told her to give him my number. Oh wait, he already had it. He'd just been too much of a coward to use it. I left that diner shaking so hard I had to sit in my car with the engine off, palms flat on my thighs, counting my breaths like a lifeguard. Then I called Lucy. Told her the name, Madison Jimenez. I'll look into it, she said, and I could hear her pen moving. 4 days later, my phone rang, unknown caller. I nearly let it go to voicemail, but some stubborn, furious part of me answered. Anna? His voice. Exactly the same. Familiar like a song you hate but know by heart. That hurt worse than anything. He launched into it. I'm so sorry, I never meant for it to happen like this, the greatest hits of regret. I cut him off. Which part are you sorry for, Marcus? The cheating? The stealing? Or the disappearing act? Silence. He inhaled, a long, frayed breath. It's more complicated than you think. Fantastic, I said. Then simplify it. Right now. No metaphors, no excuses. Start at the beginning and tell me exactly what you did, when you did it, and why. On the other end of the line, I heard a gull cry. Wind. Distant ocean, maybe. He swallowed. Okay, he said. But you're not going to like what comes next. He launched straight into his sob story. How losing his job destroyed him, how he felt like a failure, how every day he woke up terrified I'd look at him and see nothing but disappointment. He blamed the lies on shame, claimed he couldn't face me. And then came the part he clearly thought would earn sympathy. Madison understood him. Madison listened. Madison made him feel like himself again. Apparently, being understood means draining your wife's life savings and fleeing the continent. Good to know. He said that when Madison suggested they start over somewhere new, it felt like the only option left. Like packing a suitcase and vanishing was just a quirky little life choice. I asked the obvious, why didn't you just tell me? Why not say, hey, I'm miserable, I lost my job, and I think I want to leave? Why the months of pretending? Why steal everything? He sighed and said he tried to tell me so many times, but he chickened out. The longer he lied, the harder it became to come clean. Then he admitted he figured he'd take the money because we'd split it in the divorce anyway, and he needed it to start his new life. That's when I snapped. I told him that money wasn't ours. It was mine. Money I'd saved before we were married. Money I earned while he was apparently flirting on Discord with his new soulmate. He tried pulling the joint account means joint money argument, and I told him joint means we decide together, not that he waits until I'm at work and empties it like a raccoon grabbing snacks in the night. And then came the sentence that made me genuinely see red. He said he'd pay me back eventually, after he got settled and found a job in Costa Rica. Eventually. Like I'd just sit here twiddling my thumbs for a couple years while he played house with his mistress on my dime. I asked him how long eventually was supposed to be. He said maybe a year. Maybe 2. Then I asked the number that had been burning a hole in my throat. How much of my money do you actually have left? A pause. A breath. Then, about $4,000. $4,000. Out of $31,500. I asked where it all went. He said the apartment deposit, furniture, and, this is the part that made me put my hand over my mouth so I didn't scream, Madison's credit card debt. He used my money to pay off his girlfriend's bills. Bills she racked up while he was lying to me and planning a future with her. I asked about the ring. The jeweler receipt. September 15th, $3,200. He admitted it. He bought her an engagement ring while he was still sleeping in our bed and telling me he loved me. They planned to get married as soon as our divorce was finalized. I genuinely thought I might throw up. At one point he tried to rewrite history, saying we'd grown apart and I'd been distant, always focused on work. I reminded him I took on extra shifts specifically to save faster, for the house he wanted. For the dream he asked me to build. He went silent again. Then I demanded the real answer. Why do all of this instead of just divorcing me? Why sneak? Why pretend every single day? Why the empty lunchbox, the fake commutes, the lies about clients and meetings? He finally said the quiet part out loud. He didn't think he could get away with the money in a normal divorce. He knew I'd fight him, and that a lawyer would make sure things were split fairly. If he disappeared before I learned the truth, the money would be gone and there'd be nothing anyone could do. Hearing him admit it, in his own voice, hit harder than any discovery I'd made. This wasn't a breakdown. This wasn't panic. This was strategy. Months of strategy. He studied my trust, mapped out my routine, and executed the cleanest escape he could manage. And he genuinely thought he deserved sympathy for it. I told him I'd already filed for divorce and he'd be hearing from my lawyer soon. He actually had the nerve to ask if we could settle things privately and keep the lawyers out of it. Because we'd loved each other once. Because I was a good person. Translation: guilty man wants an easy escape route. I told him the only right thing was him getting on a plane, coming back to Seattle, and facing the consequences like an adult. He said he couldn't, his life was in Costa Rica now. With Madison. So I asked one last thing. Does she know you're still married? He said yes. She knew everything. She supported his decision to leave. That was the final crack. I hung up. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't yell. Didn't cry. Just ended the call. Because there's nothing left to say to a person who can destroy you and still talk about love like it's a coupon you forgot to use. That was the moment I finally stopped hoping he'd wake up, change, apologize, or fix this. He didn't lose control. He knew exactly what he was doing. When I told Lucy about the phone call, every awful, incriminating detail, she didn't even try to hide how pleased she was. I could practically hear her smiling through the line. Marcus admitting he hid assets, planned to keep them from me, and intentionally took the money because he knew a normal divorce wouldn't let him? That was gold. Legal gold. She said it might not magically drop $31,500 back into my account, but it strengthened our case in a way that would make his life significantly harder. Then she sent me a link. She'd found Madison Jimenez's social media through databases I'll never have access to. Madison is 29, brunette, into yoga, ocean selfies, and inspirational quotes about healing. Based on her Instagram, she'd been happily sipping cocktails in Costa Rica for 2 weeks. In photo after photo, she's wrapped in Marcus's arms like they're on the cover of a resort brochure. In one picture, he's kissing her cheek. In another, she's holding up her hand with the ring, my ring, sparkling in the sun. I stared at those photos until my eyes blurred. My brain kept insisting it must be someone else, some doppelganger, some glitch in reality. But no. That was my husband, smiling like he'd never been happier in his life, while I was still finding pieces of mine scattered across the floor. Maria told me to stop looking. Said I was just torturing myself. She's probably right, but I wasn't ready to look away. I needed to see who Marcus ruined his life, and mine, for. The more I looked through Madison's posts, the more surreal it felt. She'd been open online about how devastated she was when her own husband cheated. She cried, she posted self-love quotes, she mourned betrayal, and then turned around and helped Marcus do the exact same thing to someone else. That's when I found her ex-husband's profile. His name is Brendan. He'd commented on a few of her older posts. On impulse, fueled by too much coffee, zero sleep, and a boiling sense of injustice, I sent him a message. I expected silence. He replied in less than an hour. We talked on the phone for 2 full hours. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel crazy. Brendan told me their divorce finalized in March, the exact month Marcus and Madison started talking. He said Madison had a pattern. She jumped straight into new relationships the second the last one ended. She needed validation like oxygen. When she and Brendan were falling apart, she found someone new immediately. That someone was Marcus. Then Brendan said something that connected every dot. Madison had terrible credit and a mountain of debt from a failed business. In their divorce settlement, she took most of that debt. He said she was always looking for someone to save her financially. And suddenly, Marcus paying off her credit cards didn't look like generosity, it looked like recruitment. She needed money. He needed a fantasy life where he wasn't a failure. They both got what they wanted using the one thing that belonged to me. According to Brendan, Madison's parents had cut her off because of how she handled their divorce. She burned every bridge she had. Marcus was the lifeline she grabbed next. Meanwhile, the divorce on my end is slow crawling across broken glass. Lucy's doing everything she can, filing motions, tracking any assets Marcus might still have, building the case for garnishing future wages once he starts working in Costa Rica. Everything is complicated, international, and stupidly expensive. Every day feels like paperwork and waiting. Then, of course, Cecilia called again. She said Marcus wanted me to know he was sorry. That he hoped someday I could forgive him. I told her that if he were truly sorry, he could wire back my money and book a flight home. She said he couldn't just abandon the life he was building with Madison. I almost laughed that he abandoned me mid-sentence. Midlife. Mid-marriage. But now he cares about not abandoning things? That's when I told Cecilia I needed her to decide who she was supporting, because she couldn't be neutral anymore. Either she stood by her son, or she acknowledged he wrecked everything I had and stole from me. She couldn't keep pretending this was some tragic misunderstanding. She said I was being unfair. She said she was trying to help everyone. There's no everyone here. Marcus made his choice when he bought plane tickets and a ring with my savings. Cecilia made hers when she helped him lie and kept his secrets. I told her I respected that she'll love her son forever, but she shouldn't expect me to keep talking to her. She cried. I didn't. And we haven't spoken since. My lease ends in 2 months, and I'm not renewing. This place is a museum of ghosts, his toothbrush that never moved, his favorite mug still in the cabinet, the couch where he sat and told me about imaginary clients. Even if I could afford it alone, I don't want to breathe the same air where all those lies lived. Maria keeps offering to let me move in with her and Fergus, but they have a newborn and deserve peace. I need my own space anyway, somewhere that doesn't feel haunted. I've been looking at tiny studios closer to work. Nothing fancy. Just somewhere that's mine. I keep replaying our relationship like some depressing movie marathon. What was real? What was scripted? Did he ever love me, or was I just comfortable background scenery until something shinier came along? Brendan told me that kind of thinking will eat me alive. He said he did the same thing with Madison, tried to dissect every moment, every memory, until it all blurred into one giant lie. Eventually he realized it didn't matter. Once someone lies that deeply, the truth becomes irrelevant. Whatever good might have existed has been buried under so much manipulation that you can't dig it out without destroying yourself too. I asked if he knew Madison was seeing someone new. He said he suspected from her Instagram, new outfits, new dinners, new, mysterious happiness, but he didn't know who until I messaged him. And then he said something that stuck with me. Madison likes to rewrite stories. She makes whoever she's with sound like her soulmate, and whoever came before them sound like a villain. Right now, she's probably telling everyone Marcus is her hero, her rescuer, the man who healed her broken heart. Meanwhile, he's just repeating the same pattern she's lived through before, only this time, I'm the collateral damage. But here's the thought that keeps circling my brain like a vulture. Marcus could have done this the right way. He could have sat me down, told me the job was gone, told me he was unhappy, told me he wanted out. It would have hurt. It would have destroyed me. But it would have been honest. Instead, he chose the most selfish path possible: lies, stolen money, fake mornings, fake goodnights, fake future plans. That isn't someone who made a mistake. That's someone who is a mistake. So no, I don't want him back. I don't forgive him. I don't hope he finds happiness. I hope his perfect little Costa Rica fantasy collapses. I hope Madison drains him dry, moves on to her next savior, and leaves him sitting on a beach wondering how he managed to ruin his entire life for a woman who sees him as a wallet and a vacation. Lucy says we should have a settlement proposal in a month or 2. Most likely he'll try to pay me back in pathetic installments or pennies on the dollar. But honestly, that's no longer my weight to carry. I did nothing wrong. He created this mess, and he can choke on the cleanup. Marcus isn't my responsibility anymore. He's Madison's problem now.